Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's Next Level. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. I'm Tommy Ashley. You recognize Greg Barnes on the side. He and I like to dig into things different and deeper than just the normal everyday coverage you see at Inside Carolina. And what better way to do that today than with the now reigning ACC Coach of the Year, reigning ACC Tournament champions, and number one overall seed in the upcoming NCAA Tournament, head coach Jenny Levy of UNC Women's Lacrosse. Coach Levy, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Happy to be on.
This should be fun. This is covering Carolina, we get to talk to a lot of people that have had a lot of success, and a lot of times it's overlooked and it's taken for granted at times. But I wanted to sort of highlight what you've been able to do at UNC, because I think it's a pretty big deal. And that being said, I want to start out at the very beginning. Obviously, you played at Virginia, had a lot of success at Virginia, and were able to come to Carolina as, basically a rookie coach and a program that did not exist until you took over. I wanted to start right there. I mean, what is that like for a early 20s person being given the keys to a fledgling program at the University of North Carolina?
Well, what you don't know is good. I think sometimes, being a little naive is bliss. But I was hired by John Swafford back in the fall of 94, and our first season was 95, 96. And I came in with a plan. I thought we could win a national championship in 4 years. I was that arrogant and naive. And we came pretty close our third year, but there was no lacrosse in the state of North Carolina at all. It's a state school. 80% of our students here are from the state. So that was a massive challenge, trying to bring in student athletes to fill my roster. We had a great club team that was the reason why we went varsity, because it was a Title IX issue, and they petitioned the athletic department to get a varsity team. And the men's program at the time, under Coach Willie Scroggs and Dave Klarman, they had been a perennial powerhouse in men's lacrosse. So I was really lucky, because I took the men's format and looked at what they did to make them successful, and I basically copied that. And then I came in, and my office, luckily, was next to Anson Dorance's, and he became a really big mentor for me. And I don't know, if someone told me 30 years ago that I'd still be sitting here today, I don't think I would have believed you. But it's been awesome. I can't believe it's been so long. And I would tell you that I'm a much better coach today than I was 30 years ago.
Coach Levy, just looking at some of the numbers here, as Tommy said, of course, your number one overall seed, NCAA Tournament coming up. But 8 ACC Tournament titles, 8 ACC Coach of the Year awards, several national championships. As you said, when you look back to you being hired by John Swafford and having to go through that building of the program over, I assume, what was 18 months or whatever it may have been, to where you are now, one of the interesting things that we get to do as media members is, because North Carolina has had so much success in a variety of sports, that we can kind of dive into what made this sport successal. Whether that's Anson Dorrance with women's soccer, or Roy Williams with men's basketball, and Mac Brown with Carolina football. There's always something unique, and it really comes down to culture. And with you being there 30 years, the world's changed a lot in the last 30 years. I'm a lot older than I was. I was in high school when you got started. And now I've got a kid in college. So a lot has changed with the youth and with just the American culture as a whole. But yet you've maintained this consistency. So I'm just curious, in terms of building culture, what do you think has worked so well for you over the years? And is that something that's static, or is that something that you've had to be willing to change as necessary with each passing year?
Well, I think failure is a great teacher. When you come into the University of North Carolina to start a new program, and everyone around you is winning national championships every year, women's field hockey was putting together back-to-back titles in the mid-90s, as was soccer. Women's basketball just won. Men's basketball had won. In lacrosse, men's basketball had been winning under Dean, Coach Smith. And then I came in, I'm like, how in the world am I ever going to like get to like even a blip on the radar around here? So like the standards were so high. And yet, like, I would go to Anson's practices. I went to all of his practices, and the kids were having fun. They were laughing, and there was great banter. There was great competitive fire. And I was like, it was all about how to create a program that I wanted to feel a certain way. I wanted the girls to feel like they could be themselves. I feel like they could be fiercely competitive. They could be goofy. They could laugh and have a good time. So I just really attached to what Anson's program was all about. And I'm like, wow, these kids are really competitive, really talented, and they're having a ton of fun. So that was right up my alley. And I really tried to emulate that. And culture is the number one thing. I think from Coach Smith to Anson, everyone talks about people and character. And I know it's a little cliche coming from coaches, but it really is about like getting the right people here and the traditions of success. I brought kids in our first recruiting classes, and I had them recruited by the other athletes on campus because I wanted them to understand like what it took to be great here. And it took us 18 years to win a national championship. There's a story that's I talk about a lot, but we had finally gotten past like kind of being soulless. When you first start, you sell everything and we're going to win. And realizing like winning isn't the thing that really is the selling point. What really sells is, what does it feel like to be in your program? Are people feel like they're being developed, getting better as humans, part of something that's bigger than themselves? Is it fun? Is it inspiring? Is it motivational? And so like trying to really figure that out. And when you aren't winning national titles, we were winning a lot, we just weren't winning national titles. It's hard to see past that because you're really desperate to win. And I think by the time we finally won our first championship in 2013, all of the pieces had been worked on for so long. The door just, as Roy told me, he's like, Jenny, you just got to believe in what you're doing. The door will eventually fall down. And I was like, well, that's easy for you to say. You just won in 05 and 09. And at Kansas, the door didn't fall down for you at Kansas. Like, why did it fall down for you at Carolina? And so really diving into Roy's experience as a coach, even though it's basketball, what was it at Carolina that was so special that like he couldn't get done at Kansas, right? Because he's such a good coach at Kansas. His teams were great. And like he had that stigma, like you'll never win, you can't win. And I had the same thing. And I was so frustrated that I talked to Roy quite a bit. And sure enough, after we lost a heartbreaking quarterfinal game in 12, the next year the door fell down. And after that really freed me up to go even deeper into like how I wanted to be as a head coach for our athletes.
Let me ask a follow off that, because I remember one of the Dean Smith famous questions after 82. He said, am I a better coach now than I was 24 hours ago?
Yeah.
And certainly we can debate that. But in your opinion, did actually winning that, to your point there at the very end, validate what you were doing and what you were trying to do for the previous however many years there until that door did fall down? How did that sort of play into your progression of how you've coached, how you've taught, how you've mentored, being able to say and being able to know that, hey, what I did was right enough for us to win it this time?
It was completely validating, and it was 18 years in the making, from starting a program from scratch to figuring out how to bring in athletes from out of state into this great university that's really hard to get into, to at the time, like having a full-time staff. I didn't have a full-time staff. I was turning over assistant coaches, and it did not because they didn't want to, it's just because they're getting paid no money and they didn't necessarily want to coach for a living. So like managing like how to build continuity within the program in all areas was really a big challenge for me. And once the door fell down, it validated all the hard work that we had put in. And it also, I think prior to that, honestly, I used to think, okay, this is the year we have a shot to win, right? And I would think, oh, it's this year or it's that year. It can't be that year, and I would think about it as far as my players and what we had in the cabinet. And what I learned in 13 and what I've continued to understand is you have to find a way, and every year is a year. Like every year could be the year. And so there's years, I think 13, no one expected us to win. There was a front runner favorite that year. I think it was Maryland. They were undefeated going into the Final Four. And it's never anybody's year. And so if you think that you have been defeated because something doesn't go your way, maybe a game doesn't go your way, or an athlete gets injured, one of your star kids. So what's your counter attack? What's your move? And I think that was probably the biggest thing I learned is it up until that point, I'd get really upset on years I thought we had a chance to win and didn't. And I'd really be hard on myself about it. Like, this is my fault. Like, why can I not figure this out? And once I finally figured just to relax and let it happen and impact the things that you can impact. But I realized, like, every year can be a year. Like, every year you have the opportunity to position your team to win a national championship. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing I took away from that. And then we won in 16. So we won in 13, and then we won 3 years later. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, I could believe it, but we had lost in the championship game in 15 by a goal or two. And so we made it all the way. And in 16, it fell down again. And I was like, wow, I didn't ever think in my wildest dreams that we would get 2 in 4 years. So then it just started happening.
Roy Williams used to say that it doesn't matter how good your team is. If you get to the Final Four, all bets are off, and anything can happen because there's so many good teams at that point. And so there's a balancing act of understanding, what is success. And I think that for the fan bases, right, that's a little bit different than the people who are actually in it and understand, like you're saying.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, when we talk about this team that you have right now, dominant on both sides of the ball, number one nationally in defense, I guess number 2 in offense. Nick Saban has talked a lot. He had one of his recent books was talking about how when you're trying to build your program, that's motivation in and of itself. When you kind of get to the mountaintop, that's a whole different conversation. Mm-hmm. And you've had a tremendous amount of success. Does the approach change when you're having so much success to keep the bar so high? And how do you handle that, especially when you have a team as been as successful as this one has been this year?
I think every team is different. Each team has its own personality, vibe, what they need, what they don't need. I think I know that we spend our fall trying to figure out, like, what's the separator for this group? Like, what is it that they don't have as far as natural things? Like, some teams are real quiet, for example, and those teams make me nervous. Like, why are you guys so quiet? There's some teams that are like, they bounce off the walls. They're always loud. Wherever they go, they're loud. They're loud in the hotel. They're loud on the bus. They're loud at dinners. And so, this team plays with great energy. Like, we recruit energy, and we don't want to have to coach energy and effort. Those are things that I think isn't a decision between you and you, and that's an athlete's responsibility. But it's also my job to put them in an environment that motivates, inspires them to bring their energy and put that out there. So I do think that, finding the secret sauce for each team is different each year. And sometimes, like our 16 team, they were like slow starting and slow moving and quiet. And, they were just kind of like real low key all year. And then they decided that they wanted to win a national championship, and they went and did it. This team this year, they're young. So there's a lot of inexperience. I was very interested going into the ACC Championship stretch. It's 3 games in 5 days. I was curious how they would handle it physically, which they did great. I was curious how they would handle it mentally, especially a second matchup with BC in a championship game. I didn't know. We haven't been in that situation with this team. We haven't competed with this team yet in that environment. unlike the 22 team, they were so veteran, their fourth and fifth years, had a really good understanding of what their makeup was under stress. And so I was pleasantly surprised in the ACC championship game for them just to be, they were just dogs. They've been dogs all year. I was hoping that the dog would stay in the fight for the championship game, and it did. And so now I know, like, we are dogs. Like, that is just who we are. And doesn't matter the challenge, we are going to fight. And that is special to this team. And so it's going back to your question about standards. The standards are the standards. It takes, as Saban says, it takes what it takes. And so last year we were so injured. We had 8 starters out of our lineup. The standards had to be changed. We didn't change the standards, but our definition of success had to change, because we didn't have, pound man for man or woman for woman, pound for pound against some of the top teams in the country. We did not have what it took to beat those guys, even on our best day. And we gave some great best days. Like, the team did some great stuff last year, but we used that to set the foundation for this year. And so it gave us some humble pie, which was good, and some motivation for this year. But ultimately, it takes what it takes to be great. And you've got to understand that discipline, focus, and your details are really important to ending up where you want to be by the end of the season.
Talking with women's lacrosse head coach Jen Levy. Coach Levy, lot in those answers that I could go all sorts of places. Coach Forbes always says outcomes are distractions, and talks about the process and the standards and all that. So I got a couple questions here, but one I was thinking about, what's tougher, getting up after a failure or staying up after a success? For you coaching your players, and also when you've seen your players deal with the failure, deal with a bad loss, and they get up off the mat and they go and perform. Obviously, didn't have to do that this year.
Yeah.
But in the past, what's tougher, getting up or staying up?
It depends what time of year. If you have another game, I think staying focused after really good wins is a great test. So, for example, this year we went out to Northwestern, played a really great Northwestern team who's won a national championship 2 years ago, and then we turned around and played Notre Dame out. So we did a kind of a Midwest swing, and that game was a little nerve-wracking, because I'm like, oh God, we just had a really big win at Northwestern, really hard place to play. And then 4 days later or 3 days later, we're at Notre Dame, another hard place to play. Like, how are we going to respond to that? And so I would say that I would say after a loss for us, we look at it, we look at what we can get better, and we get better from it. That's easier than a great win and then having to go back and do it again. So unless it's the end of the year, you don't want to finish the year on a loss. We don't have to. Yeah.
We won't talk about that. But you mentioned dogs earlier, and you started talking about having players that are dogs. And Greg Barnes knows you're talking my language there, because I love it. I love teams like Houston in basketball, and they did great work this year getting rid of the team down the road. But can you coach those type players up to make them dogs, or do they have to be born dogs?
No, that is God-given nature. We have had some great players that are just, you can't get the dog out of them. They think too much. No, it's just how you're born. You're either a dog or you're not. And it's our job to put them in an environment that it's a good thing to be a dog, where people aren't whining and complaining when you get hit in practice and things like that.
From that standpoint, how important is it when you're coaching defense to kind of have an aggressive mindset? Obviously, y'all have been fantastic defensively this year. What's kind of the key to that and kind of fueling the aggression and the attacking nature?
Yeah. Well, I played 13 years of basketball. I wasn't a great shooter, but I was a really good defender. So we've had a really good time with this group of kids this year. We started shifting our defense last spring after, we got into a game, and we didn't make the opponent very uncomfortable. I called it Spa D, and they went to the spa and they had champagne and strawberries, and they were so comfortable. They were able to do whatever the hell they wanted on the field. And after that time, I was like, I refuse to play any more Spa D. No more Spa D. So the kids all know, like when we watch film, they're like, oh, they're playing Spa D. I'm like, no, we are not here to play Spa D. We are here to make people uncomfortable. We want to get after people. I think we have a lot of depth, and using our depth to get after people and make them uncomfortable. Sometimes you give up some ugly goals that you're like, ooh, that wasn't so good. But after you play 60 minutes against our defense, that's pressure, like double teams, shifting, sliding, it's exhausting. And if you don't practice at that pace, usually that's something that exhausts our opponents. And so we've been able to really, I didn't know going into the first game of the season, I'm thinking we played JMU, who beat us last year, 19-18. So you can see how many goals we gave up last year, the first game of the season. And I'm thinking, they're a really good team, and we're going to go after them with this defense. And I'm really curious to see how it impacts them. And because this is what we've been working on, it's been something that my assistant and I have been thinking about and really wanting to change, and we did it. And so we go into the first game of the season, and I'm a little nervous. I'm thinking, oh gosh, here we go. And sure enough, we held a JMU team who's in the tournament and I think they won their conference. We held them to 2 goals. And I'm thinking, okay, we might have something here. So each game we've played, it's been a curiosity whether the defense can do their job, and not a lack of confidence, but just I'm curious to see how people are going to game plan against it and what we need to tinker with in order to make sure that doesn't happen again. So it's all a big experiment in a lot of ways because it's a little bit new. So talking about standards, we have a new standard on defense, and it's been really working for us in our personnel.
So for our listeners who may not understand the breakdown of the NCAA tournament for women's lacrosse, 29 teams make it, and the top 3 teams get byes in the first round. So North Carolina this weekend, while other teams are playing, I guess on Friday, maybe Saturday, first round games, Carolina is going to be able to kind of sit back and watch and prepare for their second round game on I guess the 11th.
Yeah.
So I'm curious from your vantage point, big advantage. How does that change, or maybe change is not the right word? How do you approach that, knowing that you've got to buy? What do you do different, maybe, to make sure the girls are prepared the way you want them to be, while other teams have already got a game under their belt? How does that process work for you and your staff?
Yeah, it can be a little tricky. I think sometimes when you play the first game, it loosens you up as a team. You're like, oh, I played on Friday, turn around, play Sunday. I think that rhythm can be to an advantage of an opponent. So for us, obviously we didn't play this past weekend. We were off from the ACCs, which is great. We finished exams coming up this week, I think tomorrow or Thursday, and we get time to recover from playing 3 days and 5 days, get our exams under our belt, get a good night's sleep, and get going. For us, it's about sharpening the axe. Like everything we do is sharp, competitive, really focused, and it doesn't matter who we play. Both of those teams are very good. We played Clemson twice already, and they're a great team and really well coached. And then obviously the Naval Academy, like we want those guys to be tough, right? They defend our country. So, they come in, they just won their conference championship in a really great game. So, it doesn't matter who we play. I'm really looking at our standards of what our practice looks like and making sure it's succinct, that we're on the same page, and that we're executing at a high level, and then that we're confident, that we're going in confident, but not cocky. Like be humble, be hungry, and go after, go right after the jugular right away.
Absolutely. We've talked about the defense a little bit. Obviously, offensively, you guys are great as well. The Humphrey sisters just dominate out there. But I want to ask you about coaching your daughter. Yeah. I mean, I watched the video. I think Go Heels put it out, the first family of lacrosse, talking about you and your husband and 2 boys and her. But what's it like? We've talked to people that have been coached by their parents, and how, they react. But what's that like for you? And then seeing her perform like she's performed.
Yeah, Kate's just a really talented player. And before she came in, she was from North Carolina, and the sport in North Carolina isn't as advanced as it is in the Northeast. So, she went to school she went to East, and then her last 2 years of high school went up north for school. And one summer she's like, Mom, do you think I'll be good enough to play for you? I said, yeah, I think you're a really good player. And I think going up north will help you understand your strengths and your weaknesses and things that you don't necessarily get an opportunity to see down here in North Carolina as a high school player. And I said, listen, this is the deal. You can either be really good and no one cares that you're playing. You can be really bad and no one cares that you're not playing. But if you're on the fence, that's where people get a little like feisty, and they'll be, oh, well, you're just playing because you're Jenny's kid. So I said, work hard enough that you're not on the fence, make sure you're ready to go. But she's always had so much poise. She's a total competitor. I knew she was going to have a great game against Boston College. Those are the days that she shines the most. The higher the stakes, the better Kate plays. And to see her, I thought make like the play of the game with like 4 minutes left with the takeaway and the coast to coast goal. I knew she was going to, I'm thinking, she's going to go. She's either going to get wrecked or she's going to score. And I think she scored and got wrecked. But it was a pretty cool moment because I was so proud of her, and not just as a coach to player, but obviously as a parent too. And the sideline came over and went nuts. I don't think there's any film of it because the cameras are at a different angle, but like everyone on the sideline came over and like rushed me, which was like hilarious. But I'm like, guys, we still have 4 minutes to play. Like, we get back to business. But it's been a great experience. She's a great teammate. She works hard. She's talented. I think she does a great job of separating like mom time and like player time. So she'll come in and like, all right, is this player or mom time? She'll be like, mom time. I'm like, okay. Is it, so trying to still be there for her as a mom, knowing the things that I know about her daily existence, which is way more than most people's parents know because they don't get to see their kids every day. But it's awesome. She's great. It's been a really good experience. And I think if the team had any anxiety about her coming in and having a player and a parent and a player combination, I think that they are also just as happy with the situation.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did it bleed into proud parent versus happy coach there at the end of that game? And you sort of answered it. And you're right about lacrosse. We were at Carolina same time, or I was at Carolina same time your husband was, and graduated in '93. And we'd ride around freshman and sophomore year, and there were people throwing balls with sticks in yards, and we didn't know what it was. And it was lacrosse. And, and look how far it's come. But and I wanted to ask you that is you've mentioned the challenges of coaching in North Carolina, where a state where it's not that big here, women's lacrosse is not that big here. How do you change that? Is there a way for the head coach at North Carolina or the program at North Carolina to sort of foster that change to make women's lacrosse a bigger deal down here than it is?
I wish I could say that I've been effective in that change. Probably 20 years ago, we went to the North Carolina High School Association, State High School Association, to try to get women's soccer and women's lacrosse off of the same season. So in the Northeast, soccer is played in the fall and lacrosse is played in the spring. Soccer is obviously a very popular, fast-growing sport. Lacrosse is a very popular, fast-growing sport. In the state of North Carolina, a lot of the southern states, lacrosse and soccer compete. And so what happens is that the girls, all of them, our kids played soccer first, actually, because Rainbow Soccer down here, they're 3 years old. They're playing in the little like soccer leagues, and that was great. And then you get, you get to the next level of soccer and the next level of soccer, and you get trapped in. And in the Northeast, that also there's that same structure exists. But a lot of the kids that we recruit from other states, mostly in the Northeast, those guys all played, a lot of them played soccer very seriously for a long time, but they also had the opportunity to be exposed to lacrosse. And in high school or even middle school, they had the opportunity to touch a lacrosse stick and play soccer, even if it was club soccer. And down here, they never even have a chance to get exposed to lacrosse at the middle school or high school level because they're all playing soccer and it's in the same season. So even if they stop playing club, they're playing soccer in the spring. And the boys don't have that choice. The boys get to play soccer in the fall and lacrosse in the spring. So it's a problem. I think it's a Title IX issue, quite honestly, for opportunity, because in Division I, there's a lot of opportunity at the collegiate level in the sport of lacrosse. And we're not doing a great enough job of allowing, we have kids playing, but it's really at a low level. And we have some great kids who've come from the state of North Carolina who are playing lacrosse in college. And those guys are doing a great job, and we're very proud of our North Carolina homegrown players. But it's not even close to the numbers that the Northeast states are producing. And the other big challenge is obviously coaching and officials. And so that's it's a hard sell right now, because I couldn't get it changed. Those seasons changed. I do think if the seasons change, you'd have more kids, more athletes playing both.
Yeah, that makes sense. Coach Levy, before we let you get out of here, I've got one more for you. Tommy and I have spent a lot of time over the last 4 years talking about the transfer portal and NIL and all these different changes that have taken place in quick order. How has the portal and how has NIL affected women's lacrosse?
It's there. People are using it. We've used it. We have been very intentional with the type of who we bring in through the transfer portal. It's always got to be someone that can plug a hole that we have, that we feel like we need a better option there. NIL is there. People are using it. Listen, change is constant. So if you don't like it, you're going to get beat. Things over the past 30 years, things have changed over time. And the coaches and the programs that just put their hands up and say, well, I don't like it. Well, you're probably not going to be competitive in another 4 or 5 years or 2 years. So, I like to look at it and say, okay, this is the new rule. How are we going to adjust to it? How does it fit our philosophy? How does it fit our culture? And how can we use it to our best ability? And then what are the other teams out there doing? Like, what are the Floridas doing? Northwesterns, they tend to have a lot of money. So Clemson, what are they doing to use the portal, to use NIL, and how do we compete against that? And so, with the mentality of always trying to find a way to compete, we're just going to adjust and adapt and get to a place where we feel like we can serve our program and still be really competitive in it.
Yeah, everything matters this day. Money matters, transfers matter, but coaching matters the most, I do believe. And Jenny Levy is one of the best. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach Levy. It's been our pleasure to talk to you. And I guess good luck on Sunday, the 11th at noon. Mother's Day.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for the interview. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you and take care. We appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thanks.
That is head coach Jenny Levy. Greg, Dean used to say this, UNC was a women's soccer school. I tell you what, between field hockey and between women's lacrosse, UNC is just a women's sports school, period. And Levy's one of the pillars. I mean, of all the coaches at North Carolina, I don't think she gets anywhere close to the amount of recognition she needs to get for what she's been able to accomplish. And she started it from day one 30 years ago.
That's the amazing thing, Tommy, is that when she was hired, she basically had about 1.5 years to build from the dirt this program and make it competitive. And as she said, it only took her a couple of years for that to happen. And it's been incredibly successful ever since. So it's a passion project, and the fact that, of course, her husband won a title the same year she won one at Virginia. Of course, he won his at North Carolina. And then their children are or at Carolina. It's a very special thing. It's a family thing. And I'll say this too, Tommy. UNC is very unique in that they have a lot of these stories scattered throughout the Olympic sports. As you said at the start of the show, we've talked to Erin Matson, who North Carolina would love for her to have the type of success that Jenny Levy's had. Anson Dorrance. I mean, the list is long. And what's unique about that is because so many other athletic departments don't have that. When we talk about conference realignment and we talk about all these changes that potentially could come, one of the questions we always get is, what's going to happen to the Olympic sports? And so when we go and we were able to sit down with some of the Rams Club brass, a month or so ago, and what we've been told behind the scenes for a long time, and they reiterated it, is that there is such a strong passion for all the sports in North Carolina. And a lot of that's because of the success that Jenny Levy and Anson Dorrance and, Karen Shelton, all these people have had throughout their programs, that North Carolina is starting to implement these endowment funds so that each and every one of these programs can be sustained for perpetuity. And a lot of schools don't have that. And so I think as North Carolina fans and alums really kind of take stock of what they have at their, on their university, right, on campus, it really is just a special thing. And Coach Levy has done a fantastic job. Clearly they're the front runner and projected to go pretty deep in the NCAA tournament this month. So hats off to her and good luck to the team. It should be a fun watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I've gone to a few games this season, and it's intense. I mean, is as intense as it gets, especially those games against Boston College. I mean, you're missing out if you don't go see some of the Olympic sports. And a lot of people, to your point earlier, people say, "Oh, just go to the SEC and screw whatever happens to all these teams." No, this is what makes Carolina and Carolina athletics. And Dean Smith certainly recognized it by talking about it, and all the other coaches. There's that bond there that you would not have if it were just a basketball and a football school, and maybe baseball on the side or whatever. So. It's fascinating. It's great to talk to her. Like I said, Jenny Levy is Erin Matson's blueprint.
Yep.
Granted, Karen Shelton made sure Erin Matson was handed the keys to a Ferrari, but what's your saying, Greg? Even a Ferrari will run for a while without any maintenance.
That's
but
right.
Eventually the wheels will fall off. Well, you got to keep it going, and Matson's got that opportunity if she follows Levy's blueprint there. So just a fascinating interview. That's Greg Barnes. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. Go to johnnytshirt.com. If you can't get to Chapel Hill, give 10% off your order if you give them that Inside Carolina code. And if you're in town for graduation or Sunday's women's lacrosse game, go to Johnny T-Shirt. I'm sure they got you covered for everything you could possibly need, all things Carolina related. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Tommy.